Hello and welcome to my show Indus Cuisine. I'm your chef Basim Akhund. We're back with a new episode from the heart of Pakistan. Today's recipe is very interesting, and this recipe dates back to the Mughal Empire. And as everyone knows, that the Mughal people or the Mughal emperors or the Mughal, you could say, Sultanate were people who used to love meat. So today's recipe is Masala Chicken Pulao. This recipe is a different version of what they used to cook back in the day. Why? Because back in the day they were more inclined towards, you could say, meat in the form of lamb, mutton and beef. But nowadays, because everyone's living in a very globalized economy, in a very fast world, and people do not have too much of time to make beef or mutton, because that obviously takes more time, people have shifted towards substitutes such as chicken. Today's recipe is very interesting, and it has all the ingredients which you can easily find in any store nearby you. So what are the vegetables we're using today? We're using around 4 onions. We're using small 4 onions. If you can find the medium ones, you'll be using 3 onions. We'll be using 4 tomatoes and some mint leaves. These are the vegetables for today. Apart from that, the main 2 vegetables which every Pakistani food usually 95% of the time uses is ginger and garlic. Apart from that, we'll be using around 1 kilogram of chicken. What I did was I just bought a whole bird, and I told him to make small pieces, in which I told him to keep the drumstick on the side and also cut the thigh piece into 2. Then we have around 2 cups of rice, and as you can see, these are quite a lot. Why? Because you have to remember one thing, that the rice needs to be soaked for at least 30 minutes before you start cooking with it. So it's been around 20 minutes, and you can see some water over here. Once it's 30 minutes, what I'll do is I'll tell you how to deal with it. Everyone thinks that rice is very difficult, and what usually happens is that rice stays a little raw or people overcook it. But if you follow all the recipes in which we're using rice in our show Indus Cuisine, you'll basically see that it's not very difficult. You just need to know when to reduce the heat or increase the heat, and you learn when you see the episode. Then you need around 2 cups of clarified butter. I've kept one over here, the other one's on the side, which I'll use later on. Then you need some ginger, some garlic, you need some vinegar, you need some star anise, you need black cardamom, you need green cardamom, you need chaat masala, you need cumin powder, you need some black pepper and cinnamon sticks. These are all the ingredients you need for today, and it's a very easy recipe, and I'll tell you how to do it. I'm emphasizing on the easy part. Why? Because this recipe, you could say, is something you need to follow step by step. If you do not, either the rice will get overcooked or the chicken will stay a little raw. So for the first thing, what you need is you need to marinate the chicken so that the chicken cooks till the core, and there is no red particles, or you could say blood shots, in the chicken when it's cooked completely. What I'll do first is I'll just take a paring knife and I'll just cut through the cling wrap. I'll transfer all the chicken on the board, and I will marinate it. And obviously we're doing a TV show over here, and we do not have a lot of hours. So what I'll do is I shall just marinate the chicken for 10 minutes right now. But if you have time, because when you're home cooking, you do plan on things in advance a bit at least. So what you will have to do is, if you have time, marinate this for an hour. If you have more time, you can just put it in the marination and keep it in the fridge and let it be overnight. So what I'll do is, wherever I see some bone, I shall just cut it so that the heat will go till the core, and then I shall wash it once more. Wherever you see some boneless pieces like this, do not make a cut on it. We just have to make a cut wherever you see the bone. Why? Because I want the heat to penetrate till the core. When the heat penetrates till the core, what happens is the red blood shots which you get in the chicken near the bone will not be there anymore. So the leg piece needs 2 cuts, 1 on each side. Why? Because usually the leg has some redness inside, and this is what I do not like in my food, when there is redness. Okay, this is almost done. I've made some cuts. Now I shall wash the chicken, and I'll come back and I'll show you what to do next. So as you can see that I just made a slight cuts on the chicken. Now what I'll do is I shall make a very basic marinade. For that, what do I need? I need 5 tablespoons of vinegar. All-purpose vinegar would do. Then you need around 2 tablespoons of chaat masala. Add it over here. Mix it up. Remember, vinegar helps in fastening up the marination process of the chicken. And also, what does chicken vinegar do to the meat? It basically starts cooking the chicken. Now, this is something which you might think is a little unusual. Vinegar starts cutting through the meat and it starts cooking it. What is marination? Marination is the most simple form of beginning the cooking process. This doesn't mean you can eat it, but it means that the cooking process has begun. Okay, this is done. Now what I'll do is I shall just simply add the chicken and I will mix it up. Now because I've touched the chicken, I will mix it again. I had rinsed my hands before. You just have to coat it properly. As I told you, I've made the cuts so that this vinegar marinade also seeps into the bone till the core and starts cutting through all the blood clots the meat has. Now do not get disgusted, it's just life, and this is how animals and humans are made. We have blood clots in the meat, and to get rid of those, you marinate the meat, and also because it also then makes the meat really tender. So now this is over here. As you can see, the chicken is very nice. It's very properly coated. I'll keep it on the side, rinse my hands again, and then we shall continue with the recipe. So now the chicken's over here. Now we need to start cooking. For that, what I'll do is I shall pick up a big wok and we shall start basically cooking all the other ingredients. Now for this recipe will be made in two parts. The first part will be cooking all the vegetables, you could say, and the second part is cooking the chicken a little separately. What does usually have when we make pulao is that you cook the rice in the broth that comes from the chicken, but this version has the chicken fried. This recipe is very famous in the city of Karachi, which is a very cosmopolitan city, and people over there love fried chicken, so they've made a variation of this recipe. What I'll do first is I shall pick up another pan also, and because we do not have a lot of time, as I told you, I'll just let the chicken rest for 10 minutes. I shall start cooking it. So we'll add 2 cups of clarified butter, increase the heat to full. First one's done. When it's done, keep it at the back, and then the second one we shall just pour over here. Try scooping it out properly, and now I'll keep it on the side. Whatever is used goes on the side. Once the pan comes to heat, this one, what I'll do is I shall just shallow fry the chicken. On the other hand, this pan is hot. I'll just convert it back to the pilot and we shall just pick up the onions. We need around 4 onions. These are almost small onions, so I'm using 4. If you have the normal size, you'll be using 3. Okay, I'll take the root out first. Why? Because I want the onions to be sliced, and when you take the root off, what usually happens is it doesn't stick together. Pick it up and throw it in the dustbin. This is done. I'll just cut the onions into half and I shall just then slice them finely, very quickly. I've covered the chicken with a plate. Why? Because whenever you're cooking outdoor, you do not want any flies to come and sit on the meat. That basically causes contamination and you can fall sick. So whenever you're cooking outdoors, remember always to cover the meat you're using for your food. Slowly and gradually, remember one more thing, that you have to always keep the onions sliced equally, finely, and then you have to use them. Why? Because if the onions are finely sliced or finely chopped, whatever you're choosing for the recipe intended, the texture will be maintained equally. In this recipe, the onions are very important. Now what I'll do is I shall just pick up a ladle and I shall just take around, you could say, 5 tablespoons of clarified butter and add it to the pan over here. Why? It's because I want to fry the onions slightly. The thing that happens is when you fry the onions, they'll get brown, and that's the color we need for this recipe. So the onions go in first. As you can see, the pan is very hot and it's still on pilot. Always remember, for this recipe you need to add the onions in hot oil, and on the other hand, the clarified butter, sorry, we're using clarified butter, is also fairly hot over here. I'll just increase the heat to full, and what I'll do now is I shall add the chicken in the oil and let it fry. So now you need to fry the chicken for at least 4 minutes each side. So reduce the heat just to the point where you can easily add the chicken over here. When you add the chicken, eventually the temperature will come down, and remember, try placing the chicken in the oil properly. If the oil is hot and if you're filling it up, the temperature of the pan will eventually come down, so don't you worry about that. Just make sure that all the chicken goes in properly in the pan. Now what I'll do next is I'll give it a lid. Oh, sorry, the other lid, which is at the back. And then I'll let it cook for 4 minutes on this side. And when I take off the lid, I will flip it and then let it cook. On the other hand, once I rinse my hands, I'll let you know. Now you have to fry the onions till they're brown. So just increase the heat. Pick up around half a teaspoon of salt. Mix it up nicely. And you have to make sure that all the onions are coated properly with the salt. This is done. Now what I'll do is I'll place a lid on the onions and let it cook for 4 minutes till it's brown. So till the time both of these things are cooking, we'll go for a short break, and once we're back, I'll let you know what to do next. Keep watching Indus Cuisine. Welcome back. You're watching Indus Cuisine and I'm your chef Basim Akhund. During the break I did nothing and I just waited for you. And on the other hand, as you can see, the onion over here is nicely brown. What I'll just do is I'll mix it up. Why? Because the onion at the base is more brown, so I'll just flip it. And now I shall reduce the heat to the pilot. On the other hand, the chicken on the other hand is nicely cooked only on one side. So what I'll do now is I shall just start flipping it. I'll reduce the heat to the pilot. Why? Because when it's windy, you do not want to burn your hand. As you can see, there's this nice golden color on one side, which indicates that the chicken is well cooked. We will just cook the chicken for another, let's say, 4 minutes, and then we shall do something which I'll let you know in a bit. But first, just flip the chicken so that the other side also gets oil fairly. And this is almost done. Okay, now what do you need? The paring knife goes here, the spatula goes on the other side. Let this cook. Now you need to add some tomatoes so that you can break them down. But before that, we'll be adding some of the spices, which are firstly 2 pieces of star anise right now, and the later will go in the next step. We'll be using around 3 pieces of cardamom right now, for which I should just break them down like this. If you break the cardamom down, what usually happens is that the flavor will be released in the food in a better manner. Why? Because the flavor is in the seeds, not in the pod's skin. On the other hand, we'll take 1 piece and then another piece of black cardamom, just break it a bit and add it over here. And then I shall take all the pieces of garlic, shift the tomatoes on the side, and then we shall finally slice them. For this recipe, I want the garlic to be finely sliced. Why? Because when the garlic is finely sliced, it will release a nice flavor, and even if you bite on it while you're eating, it won't overpower all the other flavors. So slow and steady wins the race. Remember that. Do not fasten things up and do not try to supersede any other step when it's related to cooking. This is done. I'll pick the garlic up, I'll shift it over here, and I'll increase the heat. Now what do you need to do? You need to pick up a ladle of the clarified butter from here and transfer it over here. Why? Because I want to start frying some of the ingredients over here also. And on the other hand, the chicken is cooking on medium heat on the other side. This goes here. Now start mixing it. You want to fry all the ingredients so that the aroma comes out. Remember that. For that, the heat needs to be medium. And then low. Let it cook so that it is nice and soft. We'll be taking around 4 tomatoes. Take the eye of the tomato out and throw it in the dustbin. On the other hand, I shall just sharpen the steel. If the steel is sharpened properly, what happens is that the tomatoes will cut properly. As you can see, it's cutting nicely. Otherwise, the knife will slip and you can hurt yourself. Just cut the tomatoes, slice them like this, so that when you add it to the pan, it cooks evenly and it is fried properly. And this is done. Okay, now I'll transfer all the tomatoes to the wok. Increase the heat to full. And fry them. Add around a 1/4 teaspoon of salt over them and start mixing them. The chicken is cooked. And I shall switch the stove off over here. Give the tomatoes a lid and let them cook on high heat. Now what do we have to do? We have to pick up a plate and momentarily transfer all the chicken over here. I make it a habit all the time, or most of the time, that I clean the plate before I transfer something. So on screen also, now I'll try to do this more often. Okay, pick the chicken up and transfer it to the plate. Now the clarified butter which is being used will not be wasted, and let me tell you one thing please, that this recipe I'm cooking today serves easily 5 people. The chicken needs to be rested before it is added again. I've kept the heat high over here with a lid so that the tomatoes are cooked until they are nice and soft. They're not burning, don't worry. And this is done. Now, quickly remove the lid, and as you can see, the tomatoes are frying. Start mixing it. And as I told you, the Mughals loved food. They loved clarified butter. Now all the clarified butter from this goes into this, but for that I won't just fill it up. Why? Because the oil or the clarified butter, when it's hot, you have to be careful and you have to transfer it in a certain way. So we add almost 1.5 cups of clarified butter back into this, and the remaining will be saved on the side over here with the lid on. As you can see that the tomatoes are frying nicely and evenly. They will fry to the point that they have to start disintegrating, and the flavor must seep in the clarified butter. Now what do? We add some cumin powder. We add cinnamon sticks to the oil, and then we add the black pepper. The black pepper goes in, we mix it up nicely so that the flavor is further enhanced, and reduce the heat to medium. So just bend and look at the heat. The wind is basically flowing towards this side, so the flame goes over here. Okay, this is almost done. Now what you'll do is basically you'll start mashing the tomatoes. You want the tomatoes to mash. And now transfer the chicken back over here. The juices go in. Now, coat the chicken properly with all the spices. Give this a lid and let it cook for 4 minutes. So till the time this is cooking, what we'll do is we'll just clear up everything and then I'll let you know what to do next. So as you can see, everything is done. Now we need the ginger. So what I'll do is, for this recipe, I shall just finely slice the ginger. And then add it to the oil. It needs to be very finely sliced, almost paper thin, so that when someone bites on it, it doesn't overpower any other spice. Remember, ginger and garlic need to be sliced very finely, always. And this is done. Now what I'll do is I'll add all of this ginger into the oil and increase the heat to full. The heat goes to full and we shall fry the ginger for 30 seconds straight. Mix it up. And let it fry. This is a little heavy in terms of food, but this is how this recipe is made. Now the remaining of the star anise goes in, and now what I'll do is I'll basically add some water. The water goes in, and now, as I told you, I had soaked the rice. I'll drain the water from this. Whatever's left of it, and then I shall transfer it over here. Try not wasting. Transfer everything you find over here. And now what we'll do is we shall just spread all the rice out, reduce the heat just for right now, and move the chicken. You have to move the chicken so that the rice goes and settles at the bottom. This is done. As you can see, I added the last pieces of star anise and now they're floating on the top. This is how this recipe must be done. Now increase the heat to full, and once it starts boiling, you shall start counting the time. Place it on the board, smash it, and then add it to the wok. Place it in the wok. Take 2 pieces of the black cardamom, throw it in, and now let this cook. As you can see, it has come to boil. We shall boil it to the point that the water completely dries out. So till the time this is cooking, we'll just clean up and then I'll show you the final look of the recipe. Don't go anywhere. Keep watching Indus Cuisine. As you can see, today's recipe is ready. It was a very easy recipe and it's a little different from the contemporary pulao. The pulao basically is when the chicken is boiled in the rice. But over here, we just fried the chicken in clarified butter and then we added it. Why? Because this is how it's done nowadays. I hope you liked today's episode and I'll see you in another episode of Indus Cuisine. Take care, lovely people. Bye-bye.